So it looks like Jared is in the room.
I am indeed. I'll start my video here.
Okay.
Tatiana, how are you?
I am good. I wonder, can I maximize your video? Gosh, I'm really nervous because like it is not every day of your life, and it's not like an usual event when you get Jared Spataro talking at your conference. So I'm totally thrilled. I'm like all nerves, and I'm super happy to see you. So Jared is the first person like about Microsoft 365 in Microsoft. So welcome, and I'm muting myself.
It's great. It's great to be here with you, Tatiana. Thanks for letting me be here, and thanks to everybody else for spending the time. I'm really excited. You guys are the ones that make it happen. I get to be out in front sometimes, but you guys are definitely the folks who make it happen. So hope we can have a good conversation today. You are on mute, Tatiana.
We have a list of questions for you. So, like, how do we start? We can, like, I can read your questions. So, like,
However you'd like to do it, I'm all yours.
oh wow. So, does anyone has a question to Jared before I'm looking for the pre-moderated ones?
I'll watch the chat here too.
Okay, shall we start with Viva or shall we end with Viva?
You choose. Maybe end with Viva. I don't know. I'm happy to start with it too.
So then I think I probably start with the other questions, and whatever is left, you probably have a lot to tell about Viva, because it's a new big thing that's been announced just recently. So, what book do you read right now? What would you recommend to read, personal-wise and business-wise?
Personal-wise and business-wise. Personal-wise, I'm a big religious guy, to be honest with you. So I read the Bible almost every day. That's an important one to me. I would highly recommend that for anyone. Never go wrong with the Bible. I also have recently read The Righteous Mind by David Haight. It's a really interesting book. It's kind of essentially an analysis of how the different, I would call it factionalism in the world developed. It has a particular focus right now in the United States, but it actually is broadly applicable globally. And it's definitely worth a read. I feel like it has helped me, 2020, if we diverge from technology for a moment, what a year, right? I mean, it was a year of explosive social happenings. And I wanted to try and decode that and wrap my head around it. And I thought that book was quite good. So it's one that I'd recommend you check. It's a little academic. It's based on a bunch of research. So it's not necessarily, I tried to get my kids to read it. They got like into the first 3 pages and were like, no way, Dad. But it's definitely worth a read if you have some time.
Okay, that one goes to my list, to my reading list. Then the second question, if you start building the career from the start, once again, what would be the thing you'd prefer to know earlier?
Boy, that's a good question. If I started to build my career from the start, what would be one thing? Yeah, I guess one thing that I've learned a whole bunch of things in my career, so I'm happy to spend time on this one. But one of the things I have learned is the difference between small, medium, and big size companies and the real pros of each one of those. So I currently work in a big company, obviously, and there are pros to that. There's a lot of skill associated with it. There's a lot that you can do to marshal the resources of a big company and really do pretty amazing things. in my mind, it's almost akin to building the pyramids of Egypt. You know, you just have so many people that can work together. But that comes with the downside, of course, too, because you have to get everybody to agree and get them all pointed in the same direction, which isn't easy. I have spent some time in my career in very small companies, and in retrospect, I've loved that time because there is a chemistry and a dynamic that develops, a team spirit that develops that sometimes is hard to find in larger organizations. So maybe I wish somebody would have sat me down and said, hey, none of these three, you know, big, medium, small, is better than the other. And in fact, you should expect to spend time in all three settings. As you do, learn things. You'll get breadth, amazing breadth in small companies. You'll get incredible depth in large companies. If you can combine those things together, you know, it really helps to build out your skill set. So career-wise, that's one thing that I felt like I had to discover on my own.
So we better spend time in all three.
I have spent time in all three. Yeah, I started my career in a very small company, kind of essentially a startup. I've done startups, you know, occasionally throughout Microsoft, and then I spent time in a mid-sized company, a company called OpenText prior to Microsoft, and then I've been at Microsoft now for 15 years, if you can believe that. It's a long time in the tech industry. So I have spent time in all three.
Wow. The next is maybe challenging. I'm totally fine if you do not want to disclose anything. Where do you see M365 5 years from now? And maybe people in VR helmets working from their beds and with virtual capsules and like that.
Yes, I think a lot of people have questions about where Microsoft 365 is going. Maybe, you know, I'll kind of take a page out of our announcement last week with Viva. I won't totally talk about Viva yet because we'll get there in a moment, but we basically think that M365, as it was pre-Viva announcement, was a great set of tools that were increasingly integrated. You know, you had Teams, you had Office, Outlook, Windows, you know, increasingly integrated to kind of create this experience that flowed with a user and his or her work and that followed them from device to device. That was mostly our vision up until the pandemic, is like, we want those tools to be amazing. We want them to kind of help you get anything and everything you want done. We want them to be there to help you get them done. Since the pandemic, I think we've really been able to sharpen our vision and realize, boy, a great tool set is the right foundation. It's the right place to start. But you need something more on top of that tool set. You actually have to be able to connect humans to each other in ways that bridge what I kind of call the spatial and the temporal. So both space and time. And that's where I see M365 going. I think it's going to become this amazing layer to connect people across space and across time. Now that will involve, you know, holograms and beaming people in together. Watch this space. We have more to talk about in the coming months. Some really exciting, very exciting announcements in spaces that are kind of pushing the boundaries of collaboration. So we've got a lot to say there. But even before we get to that type of technology, we feel like there's so much more that can be done to connect people together. A very simple example that I often hear is, Jared, I feel like I can collaborate in documents pretty easily these days, but what about a whiteboard? You know, is there an easy way for me to use a whiteboard as if we were just standing next to each other? I missed those days of being in the same conference room. So just even starting with that simple setup and that scenario, I think there's a lot to go into.
Wow. I'm just a bit, a little bit overwhelmed by this. Like, I'm imagining all the things right now. That's why I'm like making like a stop and breathe. The next question is, what are the next top 3 features you have for Teams? And totally fine if you don't want to disclose anything. We can skip that one.
Well, I'm happy to talk about Teams. I don't think I'm going to pre-disclose anything today. You know, let me just back up for a moment and talk to you about our perspective on Teams, which I think might be useful too. Back in the day, you know, in the 90s, when the PC revolution was really starting to pick up steam, the whole idea was that we had a personal computer, this idea of a PC, and we needed some sort of innovation to harness the power of that new, amazing thing that was going to be part of our lives. And the thing that did it was Windows. If I remember where I was a young kid, when in 1995 when Windows came out, with Windows 95, which I consider to be really the watershed moment for Windows. And it was kind of mind blowing. I remember thinking, man, this is the future. In many ways, the kind of dominant and disruptive, most innovative technology of our time isn't the PC any longer, but it's the cloud. And I think we've been waiting several years for like, what's the thing that's going to make the cloud really useful to us if I'm not a developer? And we hope that that technology is Teams. That's how we see Teams. We see Teams as almost an operating system, if you will, for the cloud. It harnesses the power of the cloud for regular people like Jared and Tatiana. Like it helps us to take that power and video conference and chat and get things done. And it's a platform to do other things on top of. So I would say more important than just what are the next three features, it's really important to understand that we have that big vision of Teams, that we see it that way, and that we're developing it to be a platform. In many ways, you can think if Teams is analogous to Windows, then Viva is analogous to Office. So we think Windows had Office as a set of apps, Teams has Viva as a set of apps. That's the way we envision in our minds. And I can tell from your face there, Tatiana, and you're like, huh?
This is new. This is
That
new.
that kind of gives you a picture of the way we're thinking about, how things are going to develop over time.
Yes, this is interesting. Oh, okay. If you would recommend one skill to learn to be demanded on the future job market, what would it be?
Okay, I've got two. I'll do one, but then I'll do a second. I have four kids. My oldest is 22. They go 22, 20, 18, and I have a freshman in high school here, what we call in the United States. So he's 15 right now. And I talk to them all the time about one set of skills. I totally recommend people learn coding. That's the thing. I was educated as a computer scientist. I think that computer science as a domain has so much applicability. I later turned to the business aspect of of technology, but I just highly recommend technical skills, and in particular coding. I just think it just helps in so many different ways. And that leads me to my second. Man, if I could recommend just one other skill, if you gave me two, I would recommend that everyone, me included, work on their thinking skills. I think that sharp analytical kind of reasoning skills are so important. And in the world today, whether it's out, in the world broadly, where misinformation and disinformation is kind of just a fact of life, or we're just talking about work where we're trying to make good decisions, sharp thinking skills and the ability to be objective, the ability to zoom in, get into the details, and zoom back out and be able to paint that picture and reason through a picture toward an objective. All of those things are just crucial. So that's way more than you asked for. You just wanted one, but those things are very top of mind for me.
Wow. I've been blown away by your answers, so I've skipped one question unintentionally. Do you plan your career how far ahead? And can you share how exactly do you do it? The methodology.
Yeah, do I plan my career? I would say I feel like I've kind of planned my career a little bit like you ski or you surf. And what I mean by that is you can't over plan when you ski or you surf, because you're going to pick a general route, but then what you hit along the way, you have to be ready to, adapt to in the moment. And that's true if you're catching a wave or if you're going down a run skiing, either one of those things. But I have tried to pick spaces where there's going to be growth. And so from my perspective, I once, before I came to Microsoft, I ended up interviewing with both Google and Microsoft. And it was a really interesting experience. This was 15 years ago. And I remember talking in the Google Loop process with a very senior executive who, she's gone on to do amazing things. And I asked her some career advice myself. I said, look, I have no idea what I'm doing. What advice do you have for me? And she said, well, in the tech industry, my observation has been, do your best to pick the rocket ships and then ride the rocket. And I thought, huh. And I had to think about that one for a couple of years, but I kind of internalized it as, Pick areas that demonstrate an ability to grow. Try to find those things. Where's the growth going to be? And then do your very best to get yourself in the center of the action. And if you do that, then opportunities will arise. I think that was probably some of the best career advice I've been given. So again, do I plan it? Well, I don't plan it in the sense of I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that and then I'm going to do this. I do plan it in the sense of, boy, over here is a space that looks like it's going to grow. And just to connect the dots a little bit, back when I was finishing my MBA, boy, many years ago, I don't know how many, 20 years ago, it's called 18 years ago. I remember I was at a party and I had already determined, I really thought there was a future in collaboration. And I went to a party with a whole bunch of like funders and VCs and things like that. And one man asked me, what are you going to do post-graduation? I said, oh man, I'm going after collaboration. I think that's a big market. It's going to be something someday. And he laughed and laughed and said, there is nothing there. There'll never be anything important. And looking back now, and the experience we've had with the pandemic, I think, man, I was lucky that I kind of guessed right. I could have been very deterred by what he had to say. But I just had this feeling, in my stomach that like, no, there's something there, there's something there. And so I'm really pleased to see, how technology has helped to shape the world over the last 10 to 12 months.
Wow. Well, in that sense, collaboration in SharePoint has been your spaceship.
Yeah, that's how I came into Microsoft. Well, first I tried to run a business that competed against SharePoint, and then when I kind of like couldn't do that very well, then I decided if I couldn't beat him, I'd join him.
Okay, one more question about the whiteboards. You mentioned them. Can you recommend something of Microsoft ecosystem that can do whiteboards? And there's also a question about forms, something where you can use, like how you can run and use surveys.
Yeah, we've got, let me take it in the reverse order. I'll start from forms. We've got really great technology now in forms across all segments, education, consumer, commercial. I feel like we're in this space that not only can we compete with something like Google Forms, but we feel like we can do better than them in many scenarios. So I think it's a great way to go. There certainly are other offerings out there, but if you just try, forms.microsoft.com, you can really experiment with it, or within your own tenant. Forms is just an app within the M365 app switcher. And I'm very proud of our Forms technology. I particularly like the AI integration that we've seen that I think differentiates us in some ways. When it comes to just broadly speaking about, is there something available for whiteboards? Absolutely. We look at Miro, Concept Board, lots of different whiteboard apps and whiteboard-like apps out there. Again, we think of Teams as Windows, the Windows of the 21st century. We want it to be a platform. It's so important for it to be a platform. So we love those apps, and we continue to deepen our relationship with people who want to build on Teams. We also have been working on our own, what we call first party or Microsoft offering, the whiteboard app. I use it a lot. It is a great way to go. It's already built into Teams. I think people who are deep into the whiteboarding space would say, well, there are some gaps. We get that. We understand those gaps. We're working to catch up and to fill the gaps. But for us, this idea of ad hoc collaboration outside the traditional document, that is an important use case. It's a really important scenario for us. We think if we want to have this type of this type of environment where we can continue to work remotely, and I think that will persist. We may talk about that in a moment, kind of the future of work. We're going to need more tools like that.
So the next question is, how does Microsoft assist US businesses in repairing the irreparable damage caused to individuals suffering and probably organizations suffering financial damage from employment loss, housing loss, family loss, and COVID-19? So,
yeah, this kind of is a question, I would say, that looks at how Microsoft interfaces with the communities that it works in. And we have a number of different ways we do that. So the last 12 months has been difficult. We've all gone through a shared difficult experience. We've all had our own difficulties within it. So thinking about financial damage from employment loss, thinking about housing loss in some cases, thinking about losing family members. There's a lot happening, not to mention the way the economy around the global economy is changing right now. So at Microsoft, we try to pick the places where we feel like we can uniquely help. Let me give you a couple of examples. One particular example is the work that we're doing with education. We believe that learning, skilling, training, education, this area is going to be critical going forward. Just because the economy is really changing and skills, new skills are going to need to be learned. So we have worked through LinkedIn, which is a company that we own, and we have set up a whole set of courses for people to learn new skills, what we've identified as some of the top skills that people will need in this era in order to be successful. And we offer those for free right now, and they're a great way to go. You can obtain certifications. They're everything from marketing to design to coding. And we just, that is our desire, is to get literally millions of people trained up in that way. We also try to do things at the right time and the right place to help people bridge in difficulty. So when the pandemic hit last year, as an example, we had several offerings of free access to Microsoft Teams, in which literally tens of millions of people were able to use it in work type settings. And we just allowed those to persist for the most part. Those offers, those promotions and offers that we put out were about 6 months long. We're helping to bridge people in that kind of most dire time during the beginning of the pandemic. So we try to pick our spots. We are a for-profit organization, so we're trying to make money like anyone else, but at the same time, under Satya and the board, we feel a strong sense of responsibility to be really a positive influence in the communities that we operate in. And so in each locale, you'll find Microsoft offices really trying to engage with federal governments, kind of with nation-based governments, as well as with local governments on initiatives to help out.
Thank you. Okay, there are a couple of technical questions, more technical questions. I'm not sure that they're really relevant. This is about Azure AD being able to fully replace the on-premise. I bet it will, because there's no other way in the cloud.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to talk to this one in more detail. I mean, I can spend a moment. Again, the question is, can AAD, Azure Active Directory, replace Active Directory, on-prem Active?
Yes.
And, we would say for sure, we definitely see that. But let me kind of break down the problem, since people want to know. We think of it this way: for customers who are what we'd call born in the cloud, we definitely don't think that you should go to on-prem Active Directory and then go to AAD. I mean, you should definitely move to AAD. We have lots of companies and customers that do this today. It can definitely be your only identity solution. We feel really great about the capabilities that we offer. However, we also serve a lot of very, very large organizations that have really diverse needs. So hundreds of thousands of employees. They do have on-prem deployments of Active Directory. Here we have some pretty specific guidance. We recommend moving critical functions like authentication and governance to the cloud, and doing that as soon as possible. We think that auth component and the governance of overall authentication and identity, super important and should be moved to the cloud, because they can be centrally managed and can provide this broad kind of umbrella of the way you approach this area. We also hope that people who are on ADFS, which is Active Directory Federation Services, that they will move. And we have ways to move to what we'd call more modern authentication configurations. We think that's super important. But we do recommend that people who have these very complex, big on-prem AD deployments, that they would keep their identity mastering on-prem. We think that's important for them right now. There are many reasons to do that. One of which is their ability to kind of deal with on-prem apps and or kind of their own data centers. Another is when they look at their desire to kind of essentially have backup solutions. So we work with customers kind of where they are. But there's so much that you can already move to the cloud for sure. And of course, if you're ready to move to the cloud, we will support you fully. And again, we have lots of customers who do that.
Okay. One more thing about Teams. Teams Room, probably not the web part, but functionality. Well, anything additional to what you can hear, it's just the question stays chat team rooms for part step by step, but I think it's probably about lacking some information about this feature and where you can find the information.
Yeah, you know, the best place to go for that information, you shared this question with me before, and I just didn't fully understand it. I think that the best place to go is to our documentation. We have been, you know, working hard on our documentation as we always are. If somebody wants to put something in the chat about, you know, a specific Teams feature, I'm happy to answer it. I just didn't fully understand what they were asking on this one, to be honest with you.
Valid point. Yes. So anyone in the chat, you still have a chance to ask your question. And if you do that, like, please don't hesitate. Always start talking about Viva, because I really want to know more about Viva.
I'm happy to tell you. I'm happy to talk about Viva. You want to go there next?
Yes, if no one feels an urge to unmute.
We've got a silent group today.
Yes, so Viva it is.
Okay, let's do. Well, Viva was an idea that was born out of the pandemic for us. Again, maybe the best way to introduce it would be to say, when we took a step back to try and look at what was happening last year, we recognized that not only was work from home happening, there was something bigger than just we're all working from home happening. And in order to put the kind of puzzle pieces together, I went all the way back to that PC revolution where I started and thought, man, there's been this big wave of digital transformation in business that was about kind of the PC and paperwork and digitization of paper. And I realized that had continued for 30 odd years. But what we were seeing with the work from home orders last year wasn't the digitization of paperwork. It was the digitization of something else. It was kind of digitally enabling human connection, this type of interaction that in the past I probably would have flown into someplace in Europe and done this with you, and you would have maybe broadcasted out, but we would have used physical location. And in 2020, we started to realize, wait a second, the tech has gotten good enough that we can have, you know, some connections over the technology itself. As we start to look closely at that, we believe that we would say that we in 2020 saw the beginning of the truly digital era, or the second wave of digital transformation in business. And we think that there are kind of two things that are going to be necessary for companies as they navigate this new era. The first thing is going to be a set of tools that just make it possible. You can choose Teams. You may choose today, you know, we're using Zoom. You can choose your favorite set of tools, but you're going to be able to need to be able to do things like chat, video conference, collaborate on content, do kind of ad hoc collaboration like we talked about with whiteboarding. You know, there's a set of scenarios that are really important, that are kind of key and core. But we also recognize that once you get those tools in place, it's not enough. You actually have to do even more on top of that. And we believe that that's true because this new era demands new things from us. It demands us, for instance, to be able to have insight into how we're working so that we can improve performance. It requires that we kind of monitor our well-being and that we really take care to make sure we don't get burned out right now in this new world of work. It requires that we look at how we manage our knowledge across the company, how we maintain connections when we can't just go down the hall and tap each other on the shoulder. That's what Viva is about. If Microsoft 365 and the apps in M365 are kind of that organizing layer, if they are the foundation, Viva layers on top of that. And it provides what we call an employee experience platform. It allows you to take all of that goodness and to create an employee experience that's the same for people, a digital experience that's the same if they're working from home or if they're working from the office or anywhere in between. And maybe one last thought before you ask a follow-up question. One of the things that you'll hear me say over the coming weeks up at Ignite is that in many ways people thought that 2020, or had been thinking that 2020 was the year that work moved home. And in some ways that's true. Work did move home for all of us. But I think the more significant thing that happened wasn't that work moved home, it's that work moved to the cloud, and that let us work from home. As we move into 2021, get back into the office, we're going to find that that work stays in the cloud, and that now it's going to enable us to do things that we just weren't able to do previously. So that's the big change. That's why we think we need this employee experience platform. That's what Viva is all about.
Wow. Like, I think I don't have any more questions, and I'm totally thrilled that my mind is blown by Viva, and So I think the only thing that's left is to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for, well, actually, agree, like, you agree, like, well, this is one of the ways how Microsoft and you help like smaller companies, companies who like survive through pandemics, is doing things like that, and we appreciate it really. And this is like demonstrating Microsoft support to partners, and we really value this thing a lot. And it's way more than just like asking or providing leads, because a good company that brings value shall be able to feed themselves. But this is really valuable, and this is a lot for us. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your time, and you're awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure, Tatiana. Thank you for being here. Thanks for everybody who joined us, and thanks for everything that you're doing for the business. Again, I'll end where I started, which is I get to be out in front sometimes on announcements like this. It really is a group behind me at Microsoft that's doing all the work, and in front of me with the people here on the phone and with you who really make it happen. And that's just like, that's the fact, like you guys make it happen, and we recognize that. We haven't lost sight of that, and we're very appreciative of that. So everybody have a great day, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person someday.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Thank you.